It's episode 603 of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast. On today's show, I'm talking about a Rangers winning 3 out of 4 in Oakland, Marcus Semien hitting his first home run of the season, and a bunch of key Rangers bats looking like they may be bursting out of their slumps at just the right time for this Texas Rangers team. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this podcast. It is Monday, May 30th. A happy Memorial Day to all of you. Your Rangers are sitting at 22-24, so close to having a .500 record if they had just won on Sunday's game. They are still in 3rd place in the AL West. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to subscribe there and comment anything below. Comment, I'm very glad that Marcus Semien hit his first home run. Comment, I'm glad that Corey Seager hit his first home run on the road and then hit another one the next day. Comment, I don't know, I really liked seeing Top Gun. I saw that this weekend with my brother, who is in the Navy, who was deployed on the USS Lincoln, where they shot a lot of that movie. Also, they had a bar scene, and the bar was one that has been on the San Diego base for many, many years. Very famous bar that he actually took me to a few years back. So it was really cool to see that with the whole family after a rough week. It was maybe more emotional than I expected, mainly because there was, the personal ties, and my brother was there with us, and it was kind of really cool. And he's also a naval aviator, so it would really hit home. But really good movie and really good weekend full of baseball. On Friday, I actually got to go with him to the Frisco Rough Riders game. A pretty solid game there. The Rough Riders didn't end up winning, but I want to talk about this major league weekend. The Rangers almost had their first sweep in Oakland in a 4-game series since the 1970s, but they kind of blew it. I'm going to get into Sunday's game, but I want to talk about the good games first. It was their worst defensive game of the season by far on Sunday, but the Friday and the Saturday games were much, much better. The Friday games, they were some comeback wins. There were some big offensive crooked numbers that were put up this weekend, and you absolutely love to see that from this Rangers offense that has not been putting up a whole lot of crooked numbers so far on the season. They got 2 runs in that first inning, and they ended up winning 8-5 on the Friday game. Not the best game for John Gray. 5 runs allowed in 6 innings. All of those were earned runs, and a couple of them came off of back-to-back home runs, and it just felt like a really rough 5-run 3rd inning for him. Just nothing was really going his way. We had a Sean Murphy home run, a Chad Pinder home run, Ramon Laureano scored a guy in, Seth Brown was able to ground out and got him all the way to Ramon Laureano all the way to second. Just not a great game overall. Also, Ramon Laureano was able to score on a throwing error by Jonah Heim. Just not a good game. Not a good defensive weekend for the Rangers, but Texas was able to come back pretty strong. They were down 2-5 for almost the entirety of the game. 7th inning, they come back and start scoring a couple runs. They drop 2 in the 7th inning on a Nathaniel Lowe double down the line. Also a Brad Miller ground out to the second baseman that scored Sam Huff. And then a double by Adolis Garcia to center field that scored Marcus Semien, but got Adolis out at third on the throw. Just not a great base running decision there by him. A really good break by Simeon to score on that play, but just, again, a little bit more aggressive on the base running than is probably necessary. I mean, I know Chris Woodward talked about not wanting Adolis and some of the other fast and aggressive Rangers base runners to worry about making outs on the base pass, but that was one it felt like, all right, it's the 8th inning, it's still a very close game. You're trying to come back in this one. You can't really afford to give up a runner in scoring position on a not particularly close throw. He's fast, and I know Adolis is fast. He's one of the faster players in all of baseball. I believe he's in the top 10% of Major League Baseball in sprint speed, but you got to be a little bit smarter out there on the base pass. You can be aggressive, but like do it with your head on your shoulders. But it didn't matter. Andy Ibanez continued his great weekend. He had a really great series in Oakland, scored the game-winning run for the Rangers, or drove in the game-winning run the other day. I believe it was in Thursday's game on a checked swing on a full count with the bases loaded to work that walk and drive in a run. Been a pretty solid last week for him. I'll talk about more about him later, but he was able to score Cole Calhoun and Nathaniel Lowe and get to second base in the top of the ninth, and Marcus Semien was able to drive him in even further and further the Rangers lead. They scored 3 runs in the top of the ninth inning when they went in tied. Ended up winning 8-5. The Rangers bullpen was again solid in this one. John Gray, I would like him to be more consistent. I would like him to not walk 3 guys in a start. I would like him to not give up 5 runs and 2 home runs in a start. I'd also like him to cut his freaking rat tail. Like, it's just not a good look for anybody. Normally, I'm not going to criticize, but just a rat tail is such a bad look for everybody. And I said this on Twitter, and I'll say it again, but I think he might have a 3-run lower ERA than he has right now if he would just cut off the rat tail. And the source is just, dude, trust me. Just, dude, trust me. It's like that scene in Moneyball where it's like, oh, the guy has bad hair or an ugly girlfriend means he has no confidence. Well, maybe the rat tail means he's got a lot of confidence, maybe too much confidence, maybe just like tone back the confidence just a smidge. Just a smidge. Not too much, but just a smidge. But anyway, a solid outing for Matt Moore and Dennis Santana, who got the first Major League save of his career, his first professional save since he was 18. Dennis Santana had a really good weekend. Also made a really nice play on Sunday on a safety squeeze where the bunt was placed right at him, and he just fielded it perfectly and got the runner out, running from third base to home plate. Maybe should have been a little bit more dangerous on their squeeze right there, and the runner would have scored, but, you know, they ended up winning on Sunday anyway. But a really nice weekend from Dennis Santana, who overall has just been really solid for the Rangers. Joe Barlow had just saved, I believe, 2 consecutive games. So they're like, all right, let's pull in Dennis Santana, who is our big, difficult situations guy. That is his whole role, coming in with runners on base. But coming in with a 3-run lead in the 9th inning is honestly, I think, less stressful than coming in with some runners in scoring position. But I forgot to tell y'all, you know, if you want to make some bets, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more odds, props, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. But this game ended with Dennis Santana pitching quite wonderfully, and he's been pitching quite wonderfully for the Rangers all season. A sub-2 ERA in 14 2/3 innings. He hasn't been doing very well with the strikeouts, only 8 in those just under 15 innings, but has a 1.84 ERA in 17 games, coming in these very clutch situations, and his whip has been fantastic so far for the Rangers this season. A .61 whip. Opposing batters are hitting 140 against him. That's why the Rangers are bringing him in these clutch situations. That's why he's only got 17 games in just under 15 innings. He's coming in the big situations. He's got 6 holds because he's coming in danger spots, and he's doing it better than anybody else in this Rangers pen. He can also go multiple innings if the Rangers need him to. We've seen him do that in years past, but they have figured out this is a great role for Dennis Santana, and it is a very important role and a very difficult role. He has been a huge part of the Rangers pen. Coming up, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that Rangers pen and some news about Major League Baseball and some roster construction and some decisions that the Rangers are going to have to make with their pitchers moving forward. But first, this episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product that I use literally every day. I started taking AG1 because, I wanted to have some better gut health, some more energy, and an optimized immune system. It is a new nutrition. It's the best thing that you can do for yourself in under 60 seconds daily and take control of your health. It is a powder that you put in like 8 ounces to 12 ounces of water. You shake it up, drink it every day, and it's got all kinds of different great things for you instead of searching around and trying to get a whole bunch of different vitamins and supplements, or trying to use your cold brew habit. It's even cheaper than that. It costs you less than $3 a day, so you're investing in your health and it's cheaper, like I said, than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all these different supplements for yourself. You're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance. Athletic Greens have over 7,000 five-star reviews recommended by pro athletes trusted by leading health experts such as Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervais. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop and a cup of water per day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs. With your first purchase, all you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/MLB Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/MLB Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Thank you so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. It's got recaps of ML games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So last week, Major League Baseball announced because the start of the season was so short and we had such a shortened spring training, there's a little bit of a roster tweak for the first month of the season. You could have, I believe it was 28 total players and 14 pitchers on your roster because they didn't want starting pitchers to get hurt or other pitchers to get hurt because they had a shortened ramp up to the season. So starting pitchers for the first couple of rounds through were not able to throw 100 pitches. So you wanted a bigger bullpen because you needed guys who could give you some length, go multiple innings, and keep your starters from getting hurt. And we saw that for the Rangers. And now their starters are, well, for the most part, starting to go 5-6 innings pretty consistently. And, Martin Perez will give you every once in a while an 8 or 9 inning outing and really save that bullpen. But this is not something that Chris Woodward said the Rangers needed. He said it was kind of a luxury. And at this point, with their starters going so well for the most part, which again, I don't know how I trust the bottom three, how much I trust the bottom 3 starters, however you define the bottom 3 starters in this rotation. With Glenn Otto, I don't really trust him to go 5 innings every time. And, that's fine because he's a 5th, 6th, 7th starter on a decent competitive team, which kind of the Rangers are. At this point, I mean, they're 1 game below 500. Would have been nice to see them finish that off. But again, it's kind of a luxury. But the Rangers are going to have to make a decision on their bullpen at some point because they've got 2 guys that are coming back up. Jose Leclerc has started doing his rehab in Frisco, so he is pretty close. They were thinking the end of May. I'm thinking more early June. With Jonathan Hernandez, he hasn't started doing any rehab stuff, at least not on an official minor league rehab assignment. I think he's throwing in Arizona. Not exactly sure. They're not super forthcoming with that fact about what he's doing, but Jose Leclerc is in Frisco. Wish I could have seen him on Friday night, but I didn't, and that's fine. But he's been on the 60-day IL, as has Jonathan Hernandez, so the Rangers are going to have to cut somebody from the 40-man roster. I think it might be Nick Solak. It might be Willie Calhoun. Those are 2 guys that are right on the cusp. I'm not sure if they're going to have to free up 2 spots on their 40-man, but if so, I would think that those would be probably the first guys that are getting the axe. Not exactly sure. And it's looking like it's not going to be Andy Ibanez because he's been doing much, much better, especially this week. I'll talk about that a little later. But this bullpen has been really good, and adding these 2 guys is going to make it even better. I mean, it's been legitimately 5 deep with a bunch of fantastic relievers. John King had a not-so-great outing his last time out. Brett Martin has been a little inconsistent, but still overall pretty good. Matt Bush has had some flashes where, all right, giving up 4 home runs in just under 17 innings isn't great, but his fastball is looking like it's back and better than ever. Dennis Santana, like I just talked about, has been fantastic. Brock Burke has his ERA down to 1.09, and Matt Moore has been the person I've been most wrong about on this team by far. Still has a 2.01 ERA in 22 and a third innings, still walking a crap ton of batters, which I don't love. I really don't love. But again, he's a guy who can go multiple innings. That renewed curveball is really a difference maker. I mean, Joe Barlow has been fantastic as the Rangers closer, so I don't know if he's going to keep that role when the other 2 guys come back, because I really do think their stuff is definitely much better than his. And I think at their peak, they're a little bit better than Joe Barlow. But, I mean, he hasn't done anything to make him lose the closer role. He's still got a sub-2 ERA in 15 and a third innings. His ERA plus is 2.24. It's really good. His FIP isn't as great. He's got a couple of home runs that he's given up, and he's walked 5. But, again, mostly really solid stuff. The Rangers bullpen has been fantastic. I'm not sure what kind of decisions that they're going to be making on this. I think Albert Abreu is going to be a tough one to make a decision on. He was the only thing that came back in the only asset, I should say, player, whatever, that came back in the Jose Trevino trade. I'm not so sure how ready he is to be a major leaguer, but he doesn't have any options left. So if they decide to send him down or cut him off the roster, then it's going to be really tough. But they have some extra time, like I said, to make a decision on him. Basically 3 more weeks from today to make a decision. Is this guy a major leaguer or not? He's got the crazy good stuff, but it's still crazy raw. Under 9 innings and 12 walks and 2 home runs. That is not great. The FIP is 8.56. Granted, his actual ERA is 3.12. So, again, the things that he can control, the strikeouts have been fine. 9 and just under 9 innings. But again, those walk rates and the home run rates, he's only allowed 4 hits, but half of those have been home runs. That's not great. And walking more batters than you have innings pitched is never a good sign, especially not for a reliever, a guy who's supposed to be able to go multi-innings and hasn't really done that all that much. A decent number of times he's gone multiple innings, but it's not super consistent. I just don't know if he's going to be able to stick on this roster. And, even Garrett Richards has started to turn around just a little bit as of late. Still not loving what I'm seeing from him. Would probably rather give up on Garrett Richards than Albert Abreu first, even though they're paying Richards a whole lot more. But Abreu's stuff is much, much better if he can figure out how to throw strikes and stay in the zone, or at least just not walk everybody. You can be out of the zone a little bit if you're not walking everybody like he is. But, again, he's had a real problem with that. But coming up, we're going to talk about the hitters who have really been turning it around as of late, including Marcus Semien and his first home run, a little bit more about these games this weekend. First, this word from our sponsors. Now, Marcus Semien, I don't get to say that I called it because I said that he was going to do that in Houston, and he didn't do that in that series. And I said, I don't know, maybe this next upcoming series against the Angels. I don't think I said he's going to do it, but I said maybe. But, I keep hedging my bet, so I don't get to say that I called it if all these things keep happening. But the Rangers absolutely laid a smackdown on the Saturday afternoon game. Taylor Hearn had his longest outing of the season and his best outing of the season. Still had a bunch of base runners, still did allow a home run, but only walked 1 in 6 innings and struck out 5. I really, really liked what I saw from him there. I also liked the Rangers getting a just buttload of base runners and dropping 11 runs on the A's. They won 11-4. Not a particularly close game. They scored 4 runs in the 3rd inning and 6 in the 5th. Dropped 1 more for good measure. 6 runs in the 5th inning and 1 in the 6th inning. A multi-hit day for almost everybody involved in this game. Marcus Semien did not have a multi-hit game, but his 1 hit was a grand slam. His first as a Texas Ranger. Also did walk twice. Corey Seager had a 3-hit game, including his first road home run, his 9th of the season. He would drop his 10th on Sunday, the first 2 of his season. He's been having some pretty absurd splits, and before this game on Saturday, he was in a pretty rough way in his last 4 games before it. But again, a 3-hit game and a couple of home runs in 2 games will really turn that around right quick. A pretty nice home run from Marcus Semien went to the opposite field, was a grand slam, and you could hear him screaming and say, yes, finally, when he was running the bases, and I felt the exact same way. I was watching that game, I went to go pee for half second, and here he comes with his first home run of the season. Of course, my stupid tiny bladder makes me miss it, but doesn't matter. Watched on replay about 100 times since then. It has been a very, very great game. Andy Ibanez had a 3-hit game. Nathaniel Lowe had a 2-hit game. Cole Calhoun had a 3-hit game. Adolis Garcia, multi-hit game. Sam Huff, multi-hit game. Charlie Culberson, a multi-hit game. Pretty solid work. The only people who didn't have hits in this one were Eli White, who did at least get on base with a walk, and Brad Miller, who came in for Corey Seager late in this one to give him a little bit of a break. But again, a bunch of extra base hits. Adolis Garcia had his 7th homer of the season. Seager's homer was his 9th. Nathaniel Lowe had his first triple of the season. Seager had a double as well. Cole Calhoun had a double. Sam Huff had his first extra base hit of the season. And Andy Ibanez had his 3rd double of the season. decent stuff from the Rangers bullpen in this one. Garrett Richards came in, had a perfect inning. Albert Abreu, a shutout inning, and Brett Martin did allow 1 run in his 1 inning of work, but it didn't really matter. The game was pretty much out of hand by the time the Rangers had 10 runs after 4.5 innings in this one. Really solid offensive day. Again, love what I saw from Taylor Hearn and from pretty much everyone in that game. Pretty much everyone outside of Eli White, and Eli White was, fine. He had an 0 for day, but he did reach for the walk, like I said. So everyone else was doing everything. You drop 11 runs. It's hard to be mad about pretty much anything that happens in that one. But I was pretty mad the Rangers didn't come out with a sweep with this Sunday game. This was a game where the Rangers led for most of it until the bottom of the 5th inning. Actually, even after the bottom of the 5th inning, just a awful defensive showing. 5 errors for the Rangers in this one. 2 throwing errors on Marcus Semien. Not great throws. A fielding error on Corey Seager. A fielding error on Andy Ibanez. A fielding error on Charlie Culberson. But they did have 2 double plays. So it wasn't all awful defensively. Dane Dunning was not great in this one. 3 walks and 7 hits in 4 1/3 innings. Now, I think some of those hits, they could have been a little bit better defensive plays on it. And, he did allow 3 runs. Only 2 of those were earned because, again, a crap ton of errors on this team, which is they're a better defensive team than this. They should be fine. They should be okay defensively. It has not been a great showing so far for Marcus Semien defensively. He's in the bottom quarter of baseball in outs above average at second base the year after playing a Gold Glove caliber second base and winning a Gold Glove in his first full season at second base in Toronto last year. But again, it's still only his second full season playing second base every day. I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass, but he needs to be just a smidge better at that. But I want to look a little bit at his offense and what he's been doing as of late. His last 7 games, he has been much, much better. Has 8 hits and 29 at-bats, including a home run, 3 walks to 4 strikeouts, hitting .276, on base of .333, and slugging .448 in his last 7. He's hitting .267 with an on base of .328 in his last 15 games. So really, he is starting to turn it around, and he does have 6 walks to 8 strikeouts in that time. Also has 3 stolen bases in the last 7 games. Been really, really aggressive on the base pass. It's easier to do that when you're actually on the base pass, which he's been a lot more, and has been in the leadoff role, which I really, really like for him. Andy Ibanez, again, has been turning it around quite a bit as of late in his last 7 games. He has also been on fire. He's hitting .333 with an on-base of .391 and slugging .429. 2 walks to 3 strikeouts in those 21 at-bats. Loved what I've seen from him. Multi-hit games in his last 2 games and has reached base 3 times in both of his last 2 games. Love to see it for him. He's also, I believe, 3rd in defensive run saved among third basemen, and he hasn't even played all that many games at third base. So really, really love to see that. And another guy who I said needed to turn it on just a little bit offensively, because even though he is doing the things that I wanted to do, the results weren't quite there. I knew they would if he stuck with the process, and he is getting much, much better. That is Nathaniel Lowe, who has been crushing baseballs, hit another home run this weekend. He's got 2 of his 3 home runs in Oakland, and he has been hitting .400 in his last 25 at-bats. That's his last 7 games. He has a home run, 3 walks to 4 strikeouts. He's hitting .280 with an on-base of .345 and slugging .460 in his last 15 games. Oh, by the way, his on-base and slugging in his last 7 games, fantastic. On-base .464, slugging .640. A lot of doubles, a lot of triples, and a home run. Pretty darn good weekend and series in Oakland for Nathaniel Lowe. That is something that is very, very impressive and very, very important with again, a guy, Sam Huff, maybe getting some plate appearances, some games at first base. Maybe Mitch Garver getting some games at first base. Probably not too soon. Maybe, I don't know, middle of June, couple more weeks before Mitch Garver is ready to do anything in the field because of that sore elbow. Also, by the way, he has missed a couple games with some knee soreness. He has not gone on the IL. Mitch Garver, that is. That's why he is not in the lineup for the last 3 games for the Rangers. They're hoping that he can be ready for this game Monday night against the Rays. Yeah, the Rangers' schedule does not get much easier. They had a 10-game stretch, I believe it was, with games against Houston and against the Angels, and they did fairly well in that one. lost a lot more than they should have against the Astros in Houston, and did split a 2-game series in Anaheim against the Angels, and then did take care of business against this Oakland team. The Rays are a tough cookie right now. They are a very, very good team with, again, a bunch of mostly strangers with some really great pitching and some decent bats. But the Rangers' bats are red hot right now. They have a very, very deep lineup, as deep as they hoped that it would be. I mean, you have guys, the top three of your order, if you have all of those guys hitting in Simeon, Seager, and Mitch Garver, then you add in a red hot Cole Calhoun and a heating up Adolis Garcia and a pretty darn good Jonah Heim. And then you have Nathaniel Lowe at your number 7 hitter. Even if the guys in the 8 and 9 hole are pretty much defensive or offensive zeros, which they really haven't been at this point. But by the way, there's another injury update I need to give you on Brad Miller. He was removed from Sunday's game with a little bit of precautionary tightness. He had some tightness in his right hip, so there was just precautionary trying to monitor him. There's been no update since that Sunday game, but we're hoping he can get back in the lineup. But if your 8 and 9 hole guys are Brad Miller and Andy Ibanez, and those guys are starting to heat up, that's a really good lineup 1 through 9. That is a very deep lineup full of really great hitters and a just incredibly deep offense that can sustain some clunkers from the starting pitchers. If John Gray throws up another 6 innings, five runs, that's fine enough for this Rangers team. I mean, it's not great. It's not great, and it's not what you want from the guy who is your highest paid pitcher, but it's something that you can survive. And if you have some not great outings from Dane Dunning or some not great outings from Clint Otto, then you can survive those as well. But again, this lineup, we thought at the beginning of the season, before we knew that the baseball was going to be dead for the first month and a half of the year, we thought this was going to be a very deep and talented lineup, and it's looking more like that lineup that we thought they could be at the start of the season, and that is super, super encouraging for the Rangers. They have been a very good team in the month of May. They also clinched their first winning record in a month since June of 2019. That's how long it's been since this team has had a winning month. That team was so incredibly different. They had Hunter Pence. They had Joey Gallo before he was even an all-star. They had Shin-Soo Choo on that team. Nomar Mazara. They had Rougned Odor and Elvis Andrus. Like, that was just a completely different team. Also, I believe Ariel Harada was part of that Rangers rotation that year. Just a wild, wild year for the Rangers. And it's wild that it's been that long since they even had one winning month. They have been, it just underscores how bad they've been the last couple of years. I mean, last year they finished with the 3rd worst record in all of baseball. They finished with the 2nd worst record in all of baseball in 2020. And again, there were pretty much only 2 months that they had that could have been winning months. And everything really went downhill with injuries in the back half of 2019. So it makes sense that it's been that long, but still, it feels like such a long time, even though it was it was a long time. It was 3 years ago. It's been a minute, and the Rangers have a half-decent baseball team. They look like not bottom feeders. They are scrappy. They can compete with just about anybody, and they are a fun freaking team to watch playing some really good baseball right now, which is all I really wanted from the season. Next year, they can take the step and not have these stupid clunker games where you'll have 5 errors and not a super great consistent start from one of the guys who should be about your number 3 in your rotation. You're not going to have clunkers like this, even if the bullpen does look pretty decent. But again, this was not a great bullpen game. John King and Brett Martin did not do super well on the Sunday game. Dennis Santana came in and did his job for the most part, but not a great defensive day, not a super great offensive day. Did have home runs from Corey Seager and Brad Miller. But again, when you have a 5-0 lead going into the bottom of the 5th inning, that is not a game that you should blow unless you have just that kind of a stinker. Should have had a 500 record on today, coming into today with the series in Tampa Bay. It's fine. Things happen. They are where we thought they should be. They have a winning month. And this team is starting to figure out how to play some half-decent baseball, which is all I really wanted, again. But thank you guys so much for listening to Locked On Rangers. That'll do it for today's episode. And for your next listen. Check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully. He gives you his unique perspective on the major leagues, both past and present. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank y'all so much for listening, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.